I came across Chris's work back in October of 2019 when he hopped on Twitter and just started posting these magnificent photos of the ranch, photos that I've never seen before, and photos that were very unique in terms of how they were composed, their understanding of light, subject matter, and composition. And I just kept on keeping my eye on it. And then ultimately, I decided I needed to contact this person and have a longer discussion about where these images are coming from and how we can maybe put together an exhibition. So I DM'd Chris, and he got right back to me and just said, yes, I used to work security operations on Skinwalker Ranch from 2010 to 2016. I have over 1,500 objects in my archive, or photographs digitized. And, I really don't know what to do with them. I just kind of felt compelled to capture what I was seeing while I was working there in my downtime. And as a result, I now have this archive, and I would love to work with you all. And he just offered outright to donate the objects, which was really, really wonderful, because I told him a little bit about the gallery, about the university's mission as being a world-class research institution. We don't do a lot of research, obviously, in UFO and the paranormal per se, but the arts are much more malleable, thankfully, and you can have these kind of creative conversations about a wide variety of different topics, and everything is really incumbent upon personal point of view at the end of the day, as opposed to kind of university dogma and bottom lines. And he just decided, I'm going to donate these to you, and you can become kind of the clearinghouse for these, where hopefully you can use them for scholars in the future as the field of ufology and other subjects, government sponsored programs, for example, kind of evolves and expands. This could prove to be useful for the university.
And the photographer you're talking about, Chris Bartel, so he was there during, or at least right after, some of those government projects. Is that included in this collection?
Yes, actually, if I can kind of backtrack a little bit.
Absolutely.
Chris actually spent some time in the United States Air Force. So he's a soldier first, and then he kind of hopped around to different gigs, some of which dealt with working security operations for sensitive nuclear facilities and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And so he always kept his kind of camera handy, and just started shooting. So as soon as he got to the ranch, it was just an additional piece of equipment that he tacked on when he was making the rounds. And he just started taking shots, from 2010 to 2016. So one of the great things about Chris's work is that he stumbled upon a subject that he felt was important to document. And in hindsight, it was. This archive represents the first time that people will be able to see images during the OSAP and ATIP years, excuse me. So that's important, because before, through Mr. Knapp's work and Mr. Kelleher's work, we got insight into NIDS and, a little bit beyond that. And then, with Mr. Corbell and his documentary, also dealing with NIDS and kind of segueing into Mr. Hugel, who's the new owner. But there was a huge gap in between that nobody really knew about, and has been obscure, mysterious, and we're excited to actually be able to present images from that time. Now, people need to realize also at the same time, we're not going to be sharing classified or sensitive information. None of these photos are classified or are sensitive. They're merely photographs that Chris took while out, on his, regular daily route and patrol. He actually lived on the site for 2 weeks at a time in different types of rotations with different security officers. And he spent 6 solid years really understanding the space in a way that even some of the scientists that would come and spend maybe a couple hours to a couple days, or maybe a week at a time, and then kind of disappear. And then it was just Chris and his colleague, or Chris and the dogs. They had 3 dogs that kind of operated as biosensors and extensions for, trying to secure the perimeter.
Now, you've been able to share some photographs with us,
Yes.
just a handful of the hundreds that over 1,000 that you have. Um, can you tell us anything specifically about these pictures?
I sure can. One of the wonderful things about Chris's work is I think it harnesses four important components to the Skinwalker Ranch story. Number one is its rich history in Native American culture and Native American lore. Number two is the interest in the government in using it as a site to possibly research UFO and other kind of paranormal phenomenon. Number three is just the sheer grandeur and beauty of the space as an environment, as a climate, as an ecosystem. And then number four is Chris's personal experience. They're very much also autobiographical. So all four of these kind of coexist with one another in a very magical way. And that's really the beauty of this series and what many people will see. They'll see a diversity of all four of those worlds shot independently, as well as all of them kind of colliding at once. So they're quite unique in that respect.
And someone coming to you looking for these photographs, wanting to see them, and you kind of touched on this, might be looking at this saying, hey, here's a guy who was behind the scenes. He was there 24/7 for some periods of time. But you look at these photographs, at least these ones that you've shared, and I don't see anything paranormal. I don't see anything, at least on face value. So there's impact with just these images that help tell the story of Skinwalker Ranch, correct?
That's correct, and I think that here I have to kind of put on my art historian's hat a little bit and maybe educate the public in terms of how we go about
Mm-hmm.
presenting this type of material. Because many people will look at it and say, okay, they're just landscapes. It's just Skinwalker Ranch. We've seen stuff like this before. There's no really big reveal, and we're not really trying to show a big reveal per se. When you look back at the history of photography and you look at a very famous site that's been photographed again and again, a place like Yosemite, Half Dome, for example, and you had real iconic photographers like Carlton Watkins, William Henry Jackson, Ansel Adams, three iconic photographers that were drawn to a specific space to photograph exactly the same thing. And they're not the same photographs. They were all shot with different lighting situations at different times. And the same thing is here in operation with Chris's work. It's not just another photograph. It's about understanding the history of Skinwalker Ranch, keeping those things in the background while you're kind of gazing the picture plane, if you will.
Has Chris told you or shared with you, can you share any experiences he may have had that are beyond just the beauty, the grandeur, anything that goes to the mythology of Skinwalker Ranch?
Yeah, I don't want to go too deep because I think this is really Chris's story to
Sure.
share and not mine. But I will say that in some of the photographs, some things that were referenced in Mr. Knapp's and Dr. Kelleher's book are documented in Chris's photography. So that's kind of a tease. And again, I don't want to go too deep because I think it's something that Chris can elaborate on a lot more. But there are a few things here and there. I think generally speaking, most of his experiences were just there working security and in a kind of solitary environment as you would expect, being alone or in some cases attached with another coworker and then the dogs, and that's it. But there are some stories that he definitely and encounters that he just cannot explain, and so they kind of on one hand help add to the story of Skinwalker Ranch, but also validate many things that have already been um, attested to by witnesses and other means.
Do you know there's a phenomena that appears to happen with some people, that the term might be that when people leave the ranch follows them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, has he indicated anything like that, being away from the ranch, he still kind of feels attached to the ranch, or the ranch attached to him?
Well, he has definitely told me that when you're on the ranch, you feel as though you're being watched, whatever that means. I obviously can only speak to, what he's told me, but, to the best of my ability, he said that definitely as he did his, daily patrols, he felt that there was something there, something observing him, something maybe even guiding him to find and, by extension, document things, because he had a camera. So he definitely did feel that there was something strange there, something peculiar, something he personally could not explain, but just something that he could feel. That in some cases, even that words failed. There was just a feeling that just couldn't describe. There was definitely that, and I'm sure we all have our work follow us home in some capacity. So, so I'll just leave it at that. So if Chris has anything else to add to that, I'll let him speak for himself.
But what you're describing is you say there's many parts to what you're showing and talking about here. But with the photography, there's the story, there's sort of the public story, and then there's the story of the image, that what you're describing, that it sort of follows you, that it it's those scenes that he's tried to lock into the permanent memory of being in a photograph, that and I'm sure that's kind of what you've been looking for too, is to pick the right photographs that really capture that feel of being out there.
That's correct. And one of these photos here, the landscape one right here, this is one of Chris's favorite photos. It's probably hard to tell via Zoom, but it's one of his favorite photos because it kind of encapsulates the experience of being and encountering Skinwalker Ranch all in one. It's basically a storm kind of coming in, and he said that, I'm paraphrasing here, but something to the effect of, the image describes Skinwalker to a T, where it's calm one minute and chaos the next. And so here you have kind of the serenity of the flat lands and landscape, and then just this humongous storm kind of rolling in. And Chris was able to capture, that perfectly. I mean, it's just beautiful. Again, this Zoom call doesn't do it justice, but the actual image, when people do get to see it, is really breathtaking and spectacular.
Now, in the time that you've gotten to know Chris, did you ever have a chance to visit the ranch yourself?
I did not, and I was hoping to. We actually started our conversation before Skinwalker, and the current owner, Brandon, has been just phenomenal. He's very supportive of this project, what we're trying to do, because he's very forward-thinking in terms about making public a lot of the research that he's doing. And these photos are a research object in and of itself. And so, I was hoping to make it out before, but unfortunately, COVID has kind of, put the kibosh on that. But I'm hopeful that, at some point when things kind of free up, or if there's time to venture out, I may stop by.
Sure. Yeah. No. So give me the details here. You've got me hooked on the photographs. I want to see more. When? Where? How can I see more? How can I take the deep dive into this?
Yes, well, we're making the announcement that Chris is donating 1,500 digital images, which will be kind of redigitized, or I should say reformatted in a way that people will be able to kind of go onto our website, make a request to view them, and then kind of given access. The caveat to that is it takes time to do that, because there's a lot of material and we need to kind of go through color correction, and again, just make sure that it's a seamless process. So right now we're just kind of excited that we got it, and we're kind of launching the product, but the product won't actually hit the stores until probably toward the end of this year, early next year, when we actually will also be mounting a full-scale exhibition of some of the images.
And would these be as the ideal thing you'll have an in-person showing? Will there be a book involved or some sort of publication at some
Yes.
point then?
In late January of 2021, we will have an exhibition titled Christopher Bartel, the Skinwalker Ranch Portfolio, 2010-2016. And this is a selection of 80 images that both Chris and I selected to include in a portfolio of images that kind of encapsulate the entire Skinwalker Ranch archive. So it's kind of the best of series. Now there will be images obviously that are excluded, and if people want to see those, they'll have to kind of make, like I said, make an appointment so that we can kind of get them situated and things like that. Largely, we will have to. I expect that there's going to be a lot of interest, and one thing that people will have to bear in mind that this is a research object, and so they'll have to kind of go through the channels ultimately of filling out a form and contacting us to make sure that that their research interest is within the guidelines of the university and so on and so forth. It doesn't mean that we're trying to be overly difficult. We're just trying to temper people's expectations, and at the same time not overburden our staff, because we don't have a humongous staff. But I feel again that the interest in this is going to be very, very high, and we want to accommodate as many scholars and researchers as possible.
Is this the first time that either or both you or the university has kind of delved into a topic like this? A lot of times, especially when it comes to certain people, government, and some universities too, they don't want to touch this stuff. Anything to do with paranormal, aliens, UFOs, anything like that, they just, nope, we're not interested. But your university seems to be diving in right into the deep end. Is this a first for you?
It's definitely a first for me professionally, and it's a first for, I would say, this university museum. I don't have a lot of colleagues who have this specific interest, but again, taking kind of a step back, I don't think that it's that the images are just about UFOs and the paranormal. Chris's work really kind of builds off of a broader historical photographic tradition of documenting the American West. And so a lot of the photographers, the early photographers that I mentioned, like Carlton Watkins and William Henry Jackson, they spent a lot of time documenting the American West and really allowing people, or I should say, at a time where there was this mantra of manifest destiny, of pushing westward, and at the same time taking stock of valuable resources for the U.S. government. So that's kind of our interest, and we have existing holdings of such material. We definitely have a lot of William Henry Jackson, who was part of the Hayden expedition in the late 19th century. And so Chris's work is really complementary to an existing genre. It's just, it goes even a little bit further because we now know that the government was interested in researching and studying things like UFOs and paranormals, of which Skinwalker was a hotbed of activity.
All right. Well, Taras Matla from University of Maryland Art Gallery, thank you very much for taking time to talk with us. We look forward to seeing all the pictures.
Thank you very much, Duncan. It was my pleasure.